You dumb ginger. You leave your title because you don't like your 94-year-old grandma? That's the definition of something you wait out.
Meghan Markle is on the American program Suits.
Yes, Wednesdays, 8 p.m, USA Network. Check it out.
The only difference between that show and this is people watch this one.
I don't know how to break this stew. H. If you weren't in the royal family, M wouldn't be with you.
I'm so busy and happy. I'm glad we didn't make it, Harry. I don't want to be a duchess and live in a huge house for free.
She comes from an unconventional family. Yes, very different family. I was like, yeah, man, she does. Just like Harry.
Whenever the kids are being fussy and not going to bed, she puts on an episode of Suits and they're out.
What are you doing? Ow. Look at that.
One time, I just woke up, I'm in my underwear, I plop down in front of the TV, I turn it on. The moment I turn it on, Prince Harry's talking shit about me.
Can you imagine being his boss when he screws up? Like, what do you call him in and say? Prince Harry, get in here, your majesty. You blew the Henderson account, my lord.
He's like, Joe Rogan's giving out dangerous misinformation. And my first thought was, did I? I might have.
One late-night punchline cracked Buckingham mystique like crystal hitting concrete. Trevor Noah locked eyes with the camera and asked if a financially independent duchess had filed her W-2. Laughter thundered, and the crown began to wobble.
The big question everyone's asking right now is, why?
That moment, barely 30 seconds of airtime, changed everything. No palace statement, no Netflix confession, no carefully curated Instagram post had done what that single joke did. It punctured the Sussex story with something sharper than outrage, laughter, and not the nervous kind, not polite applause from a sympathetic crowd. This was belly laugh.
I think they'll move to LA because Meghan is an actor, right?
Rewind the tape, quoted in the group chat comedy, and it spread like wildfire. Within hours, clips of Trevor's monologue were sliced into TikToks, remixed into memes, and stitched into Twitter threads dissecting every syllable. Some fans defended the Duchess, others reveled in the roast. But the most dangerous reaction wasn't anger, it was agreement. People were nodding, people were laughing.
And then Harry can just join the cast of Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. Yeah. Just be like fighting on TV. I know what you said about me, Diddy. Say it to my face.
People were sharing, and once a public figure becomes laughable, the rules change. The timing was brutal. Meghan and Harry had just launched their glossy new narrative, a 6-hour docu-series, a podcast about womanhood, a memoir with more heartache than a Nicholas Sparks movie.
They're taking a sabbatical? From what? Helping their grandma pick out hats? Get the f*** out of here, man.
The branding was clear. This was a reintroduction, a plea for understanding. But instead of reclaiming the narrative, they handed comedians a goldmine, because what comedy saw wasn't a cry for empathy, it was contradiction. You can't demand privacy with one hand while inking Netflix deals with the other.
How are you gonna take a break from being royalty? What are you doing?
You can't slam the institution while cashing in on its aesthetics. You can't weep about paparazzi, and then plant a vineyard shaped like your initials, visible by drone. Trevor was just the first domino. That first wave of jokes, harmless at first, even affectionate, opened the floodgates.
It's like the weirdest thing. Oh, just have to take a break. Too many people survey us. That's too much.
What started as satire quickly spiraled into structure. Writers, comics, and even fans began noticing a pattern. For every polished grievance aired, there was a punchline waiting in the wings. Meghan says she curtsied in front of the Queen and felt awkward. TikTok replies with Princess Diaries edits and Gen Z shrugs.
This is huge. Harry and Meghan are leaving the palace to become financially independent.
We've seen this movie. Harry warns of press danger outside their Montecito mansion. A BBC host snorts, "Don't spell your name in grapes next to the security gate." The jokes worked because they didn't punch down, they punched across. Not cruelty, irony, disbelief. The subtle but devastating kind of comedy that doesn't need to yell to destroy.
And you see, this is what happens when you bring the first black woman into the royal family.
By the end of the week, it wasn't just late-night TV echoing Trevor's smirk. It was podcast hosts, morning radio DJs, and improv comics in tiny black box theaters. Every set had a Sussex tag. Every audience had a laugh ready.
Yeah. She looked at Harry and she's like, "You need to get a job. You need a job."
And Meghan, for the first time since marrying into royalty, couldn't control the script, but that was just the setup.
You a grown-ass man. You can't still be living in your mama's house, Harry.
Because while the couple's docu-series aired candlelit kitchens and string music flashbacks, one man across the pond was preparing to torch it all live on stage with no filter, and his name was Simon Brodkin.
If you haven't seen the documentary, lucky you.
Simon Brodkin didn't walk onto that stage. He invaded it, armed with a smirk, a savage sense of timing, and a script so tightly wound it could slice marble. The lights hit, the mic hummed, and within 15 seconds, the Netflix docu-series was reduced to rubble.
I watched the Harry and Meghan Netflix documentary. Now, I'll be honest with you, before I watched it, I was not a fan of theirs. Now I've actually heard their side of the story, I f***ing hate them.
Brodkin opened by calling it a 6-hour humble brag with more drone shots than dignity, and the crowd erupted. This wasn't light teasing, it was a surgical strike. He didn't need props, he didn't need visuals. All he needed was tone, and what he delivered, line after brutal line, wasn't just comedy, it was catharsis.
Ginger Royal meets fit American actress. She then discovers that everything is so unfair.
The audience didn't just laugh, they cheered. Because what Simon said out loud, they'd been muttering for months. That behind the violins and soft focus edits, the Sussex story wasn't relatable. It was rehearsed. He parodied Meghan's struggles like a daytime soap. Called Harry the first man to leave royalty and somehow still act like a prince. Then, just when it felt like he might ease up, he twisted the knife.
He then discovers that racism is actually a bad thing.
Simon dropped his grenade, a 12-word summary of the entire Netflix arc, boiled down to its most absurd frame. Something so sharp, so distilled, so undeniably biting, it became an instant viral caption. And for anyone who missed the actual series, those 12 words replaced it entirely. Overnight, you could scroll through comment sections and see fans quoting the bit like scripture. People who had never watched a single Sussex interview suddenly felt like they had, because Simon had summed it up better than the doc ever could.
They were complaining they had to pay for their own security. They were not happy about that. Yeah, they were very worried about their safety, which I get that aspect of things. After 6 episodes, I wanted to attack them.
Then came the blow that made headlines. He reminded the audience that Harry and Meghan weren't just telling their truth, they were demanding British taxpayers foot their security bill. The very same public they had at times painted as toxic. He didn't even dress it up with a punchline. He stated it flat, cold, furious. The silence between each word did more damage than 1,000 royal exclusives. That was the moment Brodkin's set stopped being comedy and started becoming culture.
Harry says, how do you explain to someone who just started dating that they have to curtsy to your own grandmother?
How do you explain that you bow to your grandmother and that you will need to curtsy? Especially to an American. Like, that's weird.
And I'm thinking, maybe just tell her that your grandmother is the queen.
It was clipped, shared, memed, and subtitled. Users spliced it over scenes from The Crown. Editors mashed it with royal wedding footage. Some even uploaded side-by-side reactions. One box for Simon's set, the other for Harry's interview with Anderson Cooper, as if the two were in direct conversation. And just like that, the Sussexes lost control of the genre they'd been playing in. They were no longer crafting narrative. They were being lampooned inside one. Because once a punchline becomes a public filter, every future appearance, every future quote, gets run through that lens. And Brodkin's lens was brutal, but he wasn't alone for long. Within 24 hours, comedy across the Atlantic began to pile on, and what came next wasn't satire, it was war.
Also announced a new trade deal with the UK that will reopen British markets for American companies. All that Britain demands in return is that we keep these two.
The ripple Simon Brodkin started in London didn't just cross the Atlantic, it slammed into it like a rogue wave. Within 24 hours of his viral set, American comedians were racing to the mic with Sussex material so sharp it felt pre-written. But here's the twist, it wasn't pre-written. That's what made it so dangerous. These weren't careful monologues passed through layers of producers and PR reps. This was raw, crowd-tested, unfiltered roast comedy, and it landed hard.
Earlier today, Suits actress Meghan Markle married some unemployed dude who still lives with his grandma.
At New York's Comedy Cellar, a late-night comic delivered the kill shot with a smirk. Meghan Markle's documentary was like watching a luxury ad for sadness, sponsored by Candlelight and Grievance. The audience howled. No tiptoeing, no qualifiers, just a direct, brutal dissection of the Sussex brand as it had evolved, or more accurately, mutated since stepping down from royal duty. What followed wasn't a trickle, it was an avalanche. Colin Jost slid a Sussex zinger into Weekend Update with the precision of a chef sharpening knives on live TV. The UK has officially agreed to a trade deal with the US, as long as we promise to keep Harry and Meghan. The studio roared, but then came the clap. That slow affirming we're not just laughing, we're agreeing clap. The kind that shifts a joke from funny to true enough to sting. And still, it didn't stop.
They wanted to know how brown the baby was gonna be.
Concerns and conversations about how dark his skin might be when he's born.
That's not racist. Even black people wanna know how brown the baby gonna be.
John Mulaney, fresh off his latest tour announcement, slipped a line into his Chicago set that had nothing to do with crowns or palaces. I used to think Prince Harry left the monarchy for love. Now I think he just hates structure and maybe sobriety. The jab was surgical. He never said Meghan's name. He didn't have to. Everyone in the crowd knew. The implication was clear. This wasn't a story about romance anymore. It was about regression, about privilege, contradiction, and a brand that couldn't decide if it wanted privacy or press. That's when it became clear. The floodgates had fully opened. In LA, stand-up showcases turned into low-key Sussex roast battles. Comics riffed on the flower sprinkles, the curtsy scene, the infamous security requests. Each new special had a fresh spin. Not all were hits, but the frequency was damning. Because in the world of comedy, repetition equals cultural truth. The more a topic gets joked about, the more that joke becomes reality. And here's the brutal irony. Meghan and Harry didn't have to say anything for this to spread. Their silence meant to project grace was now being read as confirmation.
Welcome to my garden. Well, it's not my garden, it's a set actually, but welcome to my set.
Every refusal to respond became part of the bit. Every headline they ignored became another setup for a punchline. Even amateur comics on TikTok started chiming in. POV sketches exploded. If Meghan Markle had to clock into a 9-to-5 trended for a week straight, each version more absurd than the last. People dressed up in tiaras to mimic her allegedly difficult workdays, while others lip-synced over clips of the Netflix series with captions like, "Me complaining about privacy while filming my 10th confessional." The punchlines weren't getting weaker, they were multiplying. And the scariest part for Camp Sussex? The next blow wouldn't be from a comic or a stand-up special. It would come from a cartoon, and that cartoon was about to leave a crater.
So let me start with you, sir. You've lived a life with the royal family, you've had everything handed to you, but you say your life has been hard, and now you've written all about it in your new book, Wah.
When South Park enters the conversation, it's not just a joke, it's a cultural verdict. And when Trey Parker and Matt Stone turned their attention to Meghan and Harry, they didn't poke fun, they detonated the entire Sussex image in under 22 minutes. The episode, titled The Worldwide Privacy Tour, didn't just parody their contradictions, it fossilized them, locked them into pop culture amber. And the fallout? Immediate, vicious, and global.
Yes, that's right, friend. You see, my wife and I are totally like, you should write a book because your family like stupid and then so are like journalists.
The cartoon opened with the royal lookalikes marching across continents holding protest signs that screamed, "We want privacy," all while waving to fans and appearing on talk shows. The punchline wasn't subtle. It was looped, chanted, weaponized into an earworm so insidious that within hours, TikTok teens were lip-syncing it in school cafeterias and over drone footage of Meghan's Montecito mansion. The chant turned into a meme. The meme turned into merch. And suddenly, the couple's actual PR statement sounded like punchlines from the show. It wasn't just the line that hit, it was the timing.
So you hate journalists? That's right. And now you wrote a book that reports on the lives of the royal family. Right. So you're a journalist.
The episode aired right as Harry's memoir, Spare, was making headlines for passages about frostbitten body parts and psychic readings at Diana's grave. That detail alone gave South Park more than enough fuel. The prince's cartoon double was given a memoir titled Wah! And in a single scene, the animated Duchess stormed into a room shrieking about her personal truth while flashing product endorsements on screen. There was no need for subtlety. The contradiction was the comedy. And here's the thing, South Park doesn't air live. It's not reactionary. These scripts are planned, even if turned around quickly, which meant the writers didn't just see the Sussex brand's weaknesses, they anticipated them. They saw the press strategy. They read the room. And they knew if you shout privacy while selling a 6-part docu-series, you don't get to write your own legacy. That was the real hit.
Look at this town. There's just something about it. Oh, darling, I think this might be the place. You really think so?
Not the fart jokes, not the exaggerated voices, but the framing. The Sussexes were no longer tragic heroes escaping an ancient institution. They were performers in a farcical play. Ex-royals turned reality stars. Archetypes, not advocates. And the scary part for their team? The show didn't even try to attack them on race, trauma, or royalty. It stayed firmly in the realm of contradiction and excess, and it still obliterated their credibility. Even legacy outlets admitted it. The Financial Times ran a think piece dissecting why the episode struck such a nerve, with the headline, "When Satire Sees Through the Spin."
We can have a fresh start here. Lead a normal life and have babies. Can we? Can we rally him up here and finally have our own privacy?
The Guardian called the portrayal cartoonishly cruel but devastatingly accurate. And the internet, it ran wild. Hashtag Worldwide Privacy Tour trended for days. School kids started shouting it as a joke in hallways. TikTok creators stitched the clip into every Sussex headline from the past 3 years. Even Urban Dictionary added an entry. And just when it seemed like things couldn't spiral further, late-night shows jumped in again. Trevor Noah replayed the episode with commentary. Stephen Colbert mocked the chant with a gospel choir behind him. The bit had gone nuclear. But back in the UK, another comic was warming up, and her roast would strike even closer to home.
Why does Meghan Markle make her own pretzel bags? They don't know why.
That's interesting. She takes it from one bag and puts it in another bag.
It's another bag.
That confuses people.
If South Park cracked the foundation, it was Fern Brady who walked right in and started smashing the floorboards. The sharp-tongued Scottish comic had already made waves with her dry-as-bone takedowns of class hypocrisy and media smugness, but when she turned her focus toward Meghan Markle, the tone wasn't angry. It wasn't even mocking. It was something far more lethal, bored amusement. The kind of weary chuckle that says, "We've seen this act before." Her viral bit began with an ordinary sandwich, a Tesco brand peanut butter jar to be exact. She joked about scrolling through Meghan's Netflix lifestyle clips while eating lunch on her sofa, and nearly choking when the Duchess launched into a meltdown about her groceries being too generic. Brady's response? Deadpan perfection. "I didn't know peanut butter could cause class warfare." The crowd didn't just laugh, they cackled.
It's so funny, too, that you keep calling me Meghan. You know, it's Megan now.
Because it wasn't an attack, it was an exhale, a public shrug at the ever-expanding absurdity. The bit went stratospheric. Twitter dubbed it #peanutbuttergate. TikTok creators remixed Brady's joke into supermarket POV skits. People filmed themselves holding peanut butter jars like sacred relics, whispering, "Is it worthy of Montecito?" Even Tesco itself tweeted a tongue-in-cheek poll. "Should we rebrand our smooth peanut butter, or just send Meghan a deluxe jar?" That tweet got more likes than half the Sussex Foundation's recent press releases. But Brady wasn't the only one striking gold. Alyssa Limpris, the American actress already famous for mocking influencer culture, dropped a parody that ripped through YouTube and Instagram faster than a PR firm could draft a rebuttal.
People were saying, meh. It's not meh. It's pronounced me. The H is silent.
Dressed in a silk blouse, wrapped in costume jewelry, and speaking in a clipped faux British accent, she played a thinly veiled duchess hosting a chaotic cooking show. She barked at invisible staff, fumbled her own recipe, and lovingly sprinkled edible flowers over a sad-looking sandwich. The caption read, "Flower Sprinkles Episode 1, Mindfulness and Mayhem." The audience got the joke instantly. Meghan's infamous wellness branding, already teetering under scrutiny, had finally crossed the line into parody, and Limpris didn't hold back. She delivered her final line with a deranged grin. "I save sandwich scraps for the homeless because I care." That clip alone hit 10 million views in 48 hours. And then came the merch. Tea towels reading "It's not Meghan Markle, it's Sussex." Aprons that said "Mindful Meltdown served hot." #Flower Sprinkles went viral again, this time divorced entirely from the original documentary. Now it was shorthand for performative activism, tone-deaf virtue, and the influencer meets royal contradiction. Meghan could no longer escape. Even mainstream press jumped in. The Guardian called Limpris' sketch a masterclass in influencer satire gone feral. Vanity Fair ran a headline asking, "Has the Sussex brand become unroastable or just overcooked?" And late-night shows clipped the parody into their openers. The Daily Show aired it unedited, with a title card that read, "When PR meets PB&J." At this point, it wasn't about whether the jokes were accurate. It was about the fact that everyone from comedians to cashiers was now in on them. But while the comedy world toasted its latest roast victim, a chill was creeping through Los Angeles. Because Meghan's name wasn't just trending, it was making people nervous.
Any type of flower arranging is just telling a story. What story do you want to tell? Maybe leave the country. Maybe disown your dad. Be creative with it.
The punchlines were loud, but the real story was in the silence. Not the kind Meghan had once pleaded for in interviews, or the curated piece promised in Montecito press releases. This was Hollywood silence. Strategic, chilling, and very, very loud in its own way. It started small. A fragrance sponsor rumored to be partnering with Meghan for an artisanal scent quietly pulled its rollout. No statement, no scandal, just a shift in timeline and a whole lot of vague emails about brand reassessment. Influencers who'd already received PR packages were suddenly told to hold off on content. Internally, it was labeled a soft pause. Externally, it was a retreat. But the silence didn't stop there. Tyler Perry, once hailed as Meghan's guardian angel, the man who offered her and Harry a private refuge when the rest of the world felt hostile, was asked about her on a red carpet. The question was polite, softball, an easy chance to throw support. He smiled, nodded, gave a boilerplate answer about resilience and believing in people's growth.
My name is Meghan Sussex now. Call me Meghan Markle one more time, Mindy Kaling.
He never said her name, not once, and that told the entire story, because Perry always says her name. It was the same with Oprah, the woman who hosted the most watched royal interview of the 21st century, the woman who framed Meghan's truth as sacred, who pushed the domino that sent the monarchy spinning. Now, nothing. No quote, no tweet, no whisper from her team, just radio silence. Meghan wasn't blacklisted, but she also wasn't mentioned. And in Hollywood, that's worse. That's erasure with a velvet glove. Then came Serena, when the tennis legend posted a 4th of July family montage. Sunsets, sparklers, laughter. Eagle-eyed fans noticed something missing. Meghan, the same Meghan who once stood beside Serena at baby showers, launch parties, and center court. Her absence wasn't glaring. It was surgical, a quiet signal that maybe, just maybe, the Duchess was being gently set aside.
I want my home to feel welcoming. Do you feel welcome? Does my soundstage welcome you? Mindy and I are such great friends, like besties. Like, I love her. Like, she doesn't know my name, but we're best friends.
Insiders started whispering about brand fatigue, about deals being paused, budgets being redirected, meetings being postponed indefinitely. One stylist who had previously gushed about Meghan being her forever muse scrubbed every photo from her Instagram grid. A photographer who'd shot that infamous backyard editorial, gone dark. No updates, no follow-up projects. It was like a social freeze had kicked in, and then the real panic set in. Netflix, the same platform that hosted Meghan's docu-series, reportedly began reconsidering its rollout plans for her follow-up content. Creative pivot was the official line, but in private, executives were asking hard questions about risk, optics, and viewer fatigue.
Everyone says they don't have time to make homemade meals, but if you just have 3 nannies, 2 butlers, a housekeeper, a driver, and a full-time personal assistant, you have all the time in the world. Stop making excuses and start moving snacks from one bag to another.
One source close to the decision-makers allegedly said, "We expected pushback. We didn't expect parody to outperform the product," because that's what was happening. Clips mocking Meghan were now outpacing her actual content. The memes, the satire, the flower sprinkle chaos, it was drowning out the messaging. PR couldn't keep up, and with every sponsor that paused, every collaborator that hesitated, the writing got clearer. Meghan wasn't losing deals because she was controversial. She was losing them because she had become unpredictable. And when you're selling a luxury brand, unpredictable is fatal. But while Los Angeles backed away, the UK wasn't laughing anymore. Because across the pond, the jokes had taken a darker turn.
Something terrible happened to William and Kate and the kids, right? The Queen and Charles are very old, they're going to go at some stage, and then you're left with King Andrew. No one wants that.
Across the Atlantic, the laughter started to curdle. What began as light-hearted ribbing had evolved into something far more ominous, and for the British establishment, it struck nerves the California crowd never could. This wasn't just about flower sprinkles, grocery tantrums, or Netflix contradictions anymore. It was about legacy, lineage, and a joke that hit so hard it triggered actual panic. The grenade came from Jimmy Carr. The British comedian known for walking the tightrope between brilliant and brutal took the stage at a packed London theater and delivered a Succession bit that sent shivers through the audience. Voice lowered, smile tight, he asked the crowd to imagine the worst-case scenario if tragedy struck the Cambridges, one by one, until the unthinkable happened. Prince Andrew as monarch. You could feel the oxygen leave the room. Gasps, nervous chuckles, a few shocked cackles, but mostly just that slow, horrible realization that the joke wasn't really a joke. It was a hypothetical, and a very real one.
If you are a watcher of the royal family and you like secrets, you might want to sit down because this is a doozy. Meghan Markle has finally revealed why she and Prince Harry call each other M and H.
Because Harry, the man who once stood as the monarchy's last firewall between stability and scandal, had walked voluntarily. And in doing so, he didn't just renounce his role, he left the line of succession one beat closer to disaster. The clip hit social media within minutes. People weren't just laughing, they were arguing, debating, drawing out flowcharts in the comments. Is this even possible, one user asked. Would Parliament allow it? Another replied with a meme, Meghan with her arms crossed and the caption, "You married out, now we all pay the price." Even The View aired the joke, bleeped of course, but the point landed.
What could it be? A mystery for the ages.
Whoopi Goldberg sighed. When comedians start running coronation math, you know the PR tour has failed. But the real damage came not from the comic, but from the commentary that followed. The Times ran a column questioning whether Harry's departure had inadvertently risked the monarchy's long-term future. The Telegraph quoted palace aides deeply unsettled by how plausible the nightmare scenario sounded. It wasn't that anyone believed Prince Andrew would actually wear the crown. It was that now, people were talking about it. And once a joke enters mainstream dialogue, it's nearly impossible to walk it back.
I assumed it was for the obvious reason. M is the 13th letter of the alphabet, and H is the 8th letter of the alphabet. 8 plus 13 is 21.
Kensington Palace issued no statement. Buckingham didn't blink, but sources inside the firm allegedly called an emergency optics review internal meetings to assess how and when Harry and Meghan might re-enter public life without stoking further instability. The fear wasn't about what the Sussexes might say, it was what comedians might say about them. Because now, every Sussex move triggered backlash before it even happened.
21 was Deion Sanders' number, and Deion Sanders' nickname was Neon Deion, obviously a reference to how they light up each other's lives.
Wow.
The monarchy, once an institution defined by mystery and marble, now found itself at the mercy of meme cycles. A TikTok lip sync could undo months of planning. A throwaway bit at a London club could rewrite public sentiment faster than any official biography. And Meghan and Harry, they weren't even on stage for this one, but the ripple effect still belonged to them. And back in California, their team was scrambling because the numbers were dropping fast and the strategy was about to shift into overdrive.
But no, Markle revealed that at the beginning of us dating, when everything was in code, I couldn't tell anyone who I was dating and who was keeping the secret, so I think we were just on a letter basis.
Inside Meghan's inner circle, the word was unsustainable. Approval was plummeting, sponsors were stalling, and the comedy wasn't letting up. Every flower sprinkle spoof and Succession meme chipped away at the narrative they'd spent years building. And now, with even former allies going quiet, there was only one option left on the table: redemption. The call reportedly came in just after 5 a.m. Not a polite strategy meeting, but a full-blown emergency session. Sources say Meghan's team had already cycled through every damage control trick in the book: hold statements, private outreach, influencer briefings.
I get it. In the 80s, I dated a very famous woman whose identity I will never reveal, and only ever refer to her using our secret nickname, Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher.
Wow. Y'all look good, bro.
Yeah.
Y'all look good.
None of it stuck. The memes were outpacing the messaging. The jokes were going viral before her team even knew they existed. The only thing left was a pivot so emotional, so precise, it could reframe the entire meltdown as something deeper: misunderstood pain. One name surfaced almost instantly: Judy Smith. If the name sounds familiar, it should. She's the real-life crisis manager who inspired Olivia Pope from Scandal. She's cleaned up political implosions, celebrity betrayals, even royal missteps. If Judy's name is being floated, it means the crisis isn't just PR, it's reputational triage. Whether Smith was ever officially contacted remains unclear, but just the rumor set Hollywood buzzing, because it confirmed what everyone in the industry already suspected. Meghan's team wasn't just putting out fires anymore, they were preparing for total brand reconstruction.
It's so funny you keep saying Meghan Markle, you know it's Sussex.
The redemption arc they planned? Classic playbook. Step 1. Humanize. A carefully filmed sit-down interview, soft lighting, controlled questions, maybe even a tear. The working title internally? Grace Under Pressure. The goal? Reintroduce Meghan not as a duchess, not as a brand, but as a mother, a woman, a person caught in the chaos of public perception. Step 2. Own it without owning it. A surprise podcast episode was reportedly pitched. The idea? Meghan addresses the comedy backlash head-on, but with composure, no defensiveness, just grace.
And of course, our fuckacia bread isn't complete without our flour sprinkles. Flour sprinkles! You know you've made it when you've acquired a huge fan base of bullies. Hashtag Sussex Squad.
Maybe a line like, if people find healing in laughing at me, I'll take the hit. Scripted vulnerability, calibrated humility. Step 3. Change the subject. Meghan alone, no Harry, leading a humanitarian push. A trip to a children's hospital, a visit to a women's shelter, something tactile and local. Get her photographed giving, not talking. Put kindness in the frame instead of critique. Reclaim the headlines, not with controversy but with cause. And step 4. Silence the satire, not with lawsuits but with tone.
Hey lowly cameraman, come over here and try some fried chicken. Try the fried chicken. Try the fried chicken. We need to make it look like I actually care about my camera crew. Come get some fried chicken. Act like you're having fun. Act like you're having fun.
If you can shift public mood from mockery to empathy, the jokes start to look mean. And in celebrity survival, that shift is everything. But here's the thing about redemption arcs. They only work if the audience is still rooting for you. And the audience was exhausted. Gen Z threads were flooded with fatigue. Millennials, the demographic Meghan once dominated, were disengaging. The narrative wasn't sticking. The more her team pushed misunderstood, the more the public read manipulated. Even loyal fans began sounding weary. Maybe it's time to step back, one longtime supporter posted. Again, still, the team pressed on. Press releases were drafted, schedules rearranged, the speechwriter tapped. Her next public appearance was officially on the calendar, but before she could take the stage, new polling would drop, and the numbers would be devastating.
Is this a wrinkle I see in my blouse? Who the f ironed this? I told you to iron this shirt 10 times. It looks like you only ironed it 9.
The numbers didn't trickle in, they crashed. The latest polling data landed like a slap across the Sussex rebrand, and even the most optimistic spin couldn't dress it up. Meghan Markle's public approval rating had fallen to 29%. Not a dip, not a challenging moment, a collapse. It wasn't just a bad week, it was a structural failure of narrative. The kind of shift you can't fix with a soft-focus photo shoot or a last-minute podcast drop. And the worst part? It wasn't hate fueling the numbers, it was indifference. Meghan's biggest threat wasn't trolls or tabloids, it was exhaustion.
You know what? This knife reminds me of growing up in LA.
The same audiences who once championed her as a modern royal rebel were checking out. Gen Z, the most meme-fluent generation alive, had turned her into a digital punchline. Millennials who once reposted her speeches were now posting eye-roll gifs. The numbers showed it plainly. Support from under 40 voters had cratered. And when younger fans stop defending you online, the internet doesn't get quieter, it gets meaner. On TikTok, the tone had changed from debate to mockery. "I love her, but I'm tired" was the most common refrain. Some stitched old clips of Meghan saying she wanted privacy with viral footage of her walking into a charity gala surrounded by 6 cameras.
Kosher salt brings me back to my days in LA. I'm an LA native. I am a Los Angelite.
Others revived the flower sprinkles meme, this time with overlays that read, "Add 2 cups of self-awareness or your brand won't rise." Even one supportive Reddit threads turned. "She's too curated to feel real," one post read. Another, "I can't keep pretending these appearances are spontaneous." The public no longer believed what they were being shown. And in celebrity culture, that's the death knell, not scandal, disbelief. Media analysts weighed in. One panelist on Good Morning Britain didn't hold back. "You can only weaponize victimhood so many times before people stop buying it," she said. "If every appearance is an emotional plea, the audience starts waiting for the sales pitch."
This candle just reminds me so much of growing up in LA. This salt reminds me of growing up in LA. This carbon monoxide detector just really takes me back to my time in LA where I grew up.
Her co-host agreed. She's not a public figure anymore. She's a brand, and the brand is under recall. Meanwhile, Harry remained silent, and the silence said everything. No joint statement, no appearance at Meghan's rehearsals, no Instagram photos of the two united under some cozy patio umbrella, just nothing. Rumors of separate comm strategies gained traction, with insiders hinting that the couple's public lives were beginning to diverge. The polls reflected it. People weren't just losing interest in Meghan, they were questioning Harry too.
It's so funny you keep saying Meghan Markle, you know it's Sussex.
His credibility was suffering by association. The prince who once danced with children in Lesotho was now being stitched into TikTok skits about security budgets and vineyard real estate. And still, the comedy machine roared. Jimmy Carr's Succession bit aired again in a late-night comedy roundup. Alyssa Limperous's flower sprinkle meltdown resurfaced in another remix, this one cut against Meghan's actual documentary soundbites. The phrase worldwide privacy tour was back on the For You page like it had never left. So as Meghan prepared for her next high-stakes appearance, one she could not cancel, delay, or hide from, the weight of every poll, every punchline, every paused partnership pressed down. She had one more room to face, and this time, the silence might not be on her terms.
Okay, David, I'm gonna need you to slice into your flesh so I can jump in and be Nurse Meghan.
The invitations had been sent, the press alerts locked in, the step and repeat banners were already being ironed. Meghan Markle was confirmed as keynote speaker at a black-tie Beverly Hills charity gala for childhood literacy, and there was no backing out, not this time. This wasn't a controlled podcast upload. It wasn't a Netflix teaser or a softly lit home interview with questions pre-screened and answers rehearsed. This was a room with real people, real reactions, and real stakes. For Meghan's team, the tension was unbearable. Sources say crisis consultants were briefed multiple times. Every angle was game planned. What if she got heckled? What if there was another awkward silence? What if applause came late? Or worse, not at all. One insider claimed her team even coordinated with the event staff to cue ovations at strategic moments.
You know you've made it when you've acquired a huge fan base of bullies. Hashtag Sussex Squad. Sussex!
Just to keep the energy from dipping too low. Optics were everything now. Vibes had to be managed. Because the risk was no longer bad press. The risk was no press at all. Or worse, mockery dressed as coverage. And the weirdest twist? Some within her circle allegedly wanted a moment of vulnerability. Something raw, off script, maybe even tearful. If she breaks a little, one former publicist whispered, people will remember she's human, not a product. That's how far things had slipped, where even a live stumble could be preferable to another round of icy, over-rehearsed polish. But that night, the stakes weren't just emotional, they were symbolic. This was Meghan's first high-profile stage appearance since the comedy blitz began.
Who got the Kroger peanut butter? It's not even organic. I thought they gave us $50 million to make this show.
Since South Park, since flower sprinkles, since the Jimmy Carr Succession bit echoed across breakfast tables and TikTok timelines, since sponsors started pulling back and former friends started vanishing like smoke. Everything was riding on this moment. The lights dimmed, the MC's voice echoed through the hall, applause swelled. Meghan walked out, and then, that silence. Not the warm hush of anticipation, not the reverent quiet given to royalty, the other kind, the kind of silence that sits just a half second too long, the kind that makes a room shift in its seat. She smiled, she paused, she launched into the speech. The words were good, polished, passionate, but the air had changed, and everyone felt it, because now, every phrase sounded like it was chasing the past, trying to reclaim something, a version of her that maybe, just maybe, people had already let go of. She closed with a call for unity, for literacy, for compassion. The front row stood, scattered applause followed, the cameras flashed, the headlines would come, but the moment, it passed. No viral clip, no breakout quote, no scandal, just the slow realization that when the laughter stops and the silence stays, what's left isn't power, it's uncertainty. That night didn't tank Meghan's image, but it didn't save it either, because by now the narrative had slipped too far, from duchess to disruptor to punchline, from fairy tale to farce, from carefully curated sympathy to a meme cycle that couldn't be tamed. And while Meghan stood under the lights, the internet did what it does best. It reframed the whole evening. Clips of the worldwide privacy tour chant resurfaced. Fans reposted Limper's skit with the caption, "She made it through the speech." But did she make it through the silence? Jimmy Carr's Succession joke trended again, because the fairy tale carriage didn't crash, it stalled, right there in a ballroom full of eyes, waiting for something magical that never came. What do you think? Can Meghan ever flip the script again? Or has the comedy locked her story in for good? Drop your thoughts below, like, subscribe, and stay tuned. The next video on your screen is waiting. And trust me, you won't believe what's coming next.